Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. So excited to introduce you today to Mark O'Looney-Cannon. Today we talk about Mark's family and the two daughters that he and his husband had through surrogacy in the United States. Mark is working in the U.S. and did school in the U.S., but is an Irish citizen, born and raised. And we talk a lot about what the laws are like for queer families in Ireland and the fundamental rights that are being denied to all Irish queer families and what you can do to learn more about it. Welcome. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Mark O'Looney-Cannon. And I first found Mark on Instagram on their page, Two Men and a Surrogacy. And Mark, I just want to say welcome. Please tell us about you and your family.
Great. So very happy to be here. I am married to a wonderful man, Owen. We have been together almost 10 years this year, which is kind of crazy. And we've been married since 2001. We were one of them couples that our wedding was delayed many, many times. And we had wanted to start a family, and in that traditional Irish Catholic guilt of having to get married before your wedding, we decided to do that, which was just crazy looking back on it. We were like, it was so ridiculous of an expectation to put on ourselves to have to be married before having a child when we were having children in the most non-traditional way,
Right.
which was surrogacy. So we have two like incredible daughters, light of our lives, Aria and Nala. Aria was born on the 3rd of June, 2022, through surrogacy with our wonderful surrogate, Haley. And we had an incredible egg donor who was separate from Haley as well. And then we had embryos left over from that journey. And Haley, after she gave birth to Aria, said, would you like to go again? I know you want 4 children. And we were like, yes, absolutely. So then Nala was born on the 22nd of February, 2024. And it's funny because both births were so incredibly different, but so similar in so many ways. And now as I watch them grow, it's the same with them. Like they are so similar in certain ways and so different in others. So we are incredibly lucky to be our family of 4. As I said, I think we want 2 more children. I, our children are very good children, and I don't mean that. And look, all children are good regardless, but I mean like ours sleep. So it just means that while we're sleeping, we're like, you know what, this is great. Why not just add a few more? But we will see how it all comes together because, as you know, surrogacy is one of the most expensive things you can do. So we need to currently, after our last surrogacy journey, we just have no savings or anything, like we're totally wiped out. So it's starting from scratch and trying to save again while moving to a bigger house where the rent is more, so we don't even have money to save. But we'll get there, as many couples do. You figure it out.
You do, and you find your priorities and what is the priority and that kind of thing. But and to be honest, I think that before we even have our first child, it's easy to envision our life with however many children we think we're going to have. And then that first child comes and you're like, okay, I could add a second. But with each child, you're thinking, this does not go as picture perfect as it does on TV. And so our numbers can change sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen it, like I have so many nieces and nephews. I think between myself and Owen, we have 22 or 23, which is crazy, but it's Irish Catholic family. It's what was done. And I think it's partly why we're like four,
Right.
as well. And there are times I look at our lives and I'm like, look how incredibly lucky we are to have two healthy daughters
Hmm.
who are just such happy children, and our life could be like absolutely fulfilled as a family
Hmm.
of four as well. I think that pressure we put on ourselves is probably a little bit like the wedding, the Catholic guilt, as I said. It's
Hmm.
you have a big family, but also we grew up in big families. I think, like for me, as much as I kill my siblings sometimes,
Hmm.
they are my world. I love them. Um,
Hmm.
they're the people you fight with, and then the people you hug 2 seconds later.
Yeah.
It was all, and it was always that way because there was six of us. So like six different personalities are so different, and I think um, I've always wanted that for my children as well. But as you say, let's wait till they're a bit older. Aria's just hitting her tantrum phase now, so
Mm.
loving that, and I I'm sure it's only going to get harder as like Nala gets to that age and she's tantruming, and then Arya can like have a full on conversation, because even now she's getting to that point as well where she'll talk to you and she strings sentences together and everything and she understands everything, but some of her sentences don't make sense grammatically and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
you're trying to figure out exactly what she means, which is harder. So in a way, I'm like, yes, get to the next stage, can't wait for it. And then another way, I know from her that I don't want to wish away stages anymore. Like with Nala, I'm like, stay the
Right.
stage forever because it's
Yeah,
so short and
it is.
everything feels like the best thing, and you're always waiting for them to walk or for them to crawl or for them to like talk, whatever. And it's just so much pressure to put on them and yourself, and you just don't enjoy the moment when you're doing that, which we're trying to be much more in the moment now with Nala because we're aware of how quickly it goes.
Oh, it so does. It so does. And I'd like to tell you that it slows down, but with children in their mid 20s, I can tell you it doesn't slow down, but it does evolve and become so much, it's so much fun as they get older too. So yes, I find myself standing in the line at the grocery store, sometimes swaying because I see other people with their children and missing those baby moments. So,
But there's
yeah.
so many more moments, I think, at that age as well. I actually bumped into someone that I don't know. This was like, I never interact with people that I don't know in a shop, but I was picking out paint samples for my daughter's room, and she was on the phone to her teenager, and was like, "No, it's in the fridge. No, it's definitely in the fridge. Can you FaceTime me? Just video me and show me the fridge because I will point it out." And then eventually was like, do you know what? Just my purse is there. Take the money, go buy some butter or whatever it was. And I was in hysterics, and I just was like, oh my God, it's all ahead of me. And she was like, oh, you have kids? And I said, yes, I have one. And I actually had Nala was on the way. She was about to be born any day. And she was like, it doesn't, like, every phase is so different and it doesn't get
Mhm.
easier. And you're arguing, and then they come back to you and so on. And I even know that from my own
Sure.
parents. Like, my poor parents, I was a nightmare teenager. I was just so bullied in school that I
Hmm.
just took it out on them because I had no other place to take it
Yeah.
out on. Um, Whereas now, like, I go on holidays with my parents and they come over and spend time with the kids, and I ring my mom probably every day, if not every other day. And it's just, it's wonderful to have that relationship. And um, like in a way you're like, oh, that will be great when they're older, but also as I said, not wishing away the years by any
Hmm.
means. There's going to be so many times in between that are amazing and so many hard times and
Sure.
everything in between.
And if you're open to receiving all of it, then you know that you'll get through it, right? That's just the way
Exactly,
it
yeah.
unfolds. You are living in New York, is that correct?
Yes, I we have been living in New York 6 years. It is so funny. Myself and Owen were together and figuring out, we were in this weird place where we were figuring out whether we were going to either break up or be together for life. because I am that person who's like, I know what I want. I'm very clear about what I want and so on. And what happened was we decided we want to be together for life. That was great. And two things were happening at the same time. Owen was auditioning for a show in London, and he had got very far in it, and he was like, I think he was like one audition away from finding out what he if he had got it or not. And I was applying for Cornell, but I got Cornell first, and it was a full scholarship to go.
Wow.
And it was a house on top of that for the year and a wage on top of it. So because we had made that decision to be together for life, he was like, I'm gonna pull myself out, I'm not gonna be in the audition, I'm gonna come with you. But I'm gonna come with you for 1 year and then we'll move back to Ireland and we can go back to there. And that was absolutely agreeable. I was like, I just want to do 1 year. It's like gonna be the best year of our lives. And it was the best year of our lives. We got engaged. It was like a big well, at the time it was. Now we have our daughters. The years they were
Right.
born were the best years. Um, but it was, do you know what? It was the best year of our life without kids. That's the best way to
Sure.
phrase it.
Sure.
Because we had so many life moments and we realized we wanted to be together. And we moved to New York together and we got engaged and we had friends visit all the time because it was the first year we were in New York. And I had like everything paid for. So I didn't have to worry about work on top of study. So, and don't get me wrong, studying was awful at times, but it was just so great to have that experience. And at the end of it, Mastercard offered me to stay in New York, and I said, "Will we do one more year?" And he said, "We can do one more." And now 5 more years later, we're here. So look, and part of that is there's so many reasons behind that. Some of it is that our children, it was easier to have them in America. Others was that when well, the pandemic hit as well. We weren't going to move back during the pandemic. But also like when we look at our like moving home now, the struggles we face is our children aren't recognized in Ireland. So they have American birth certs, they're citizens over here. We have Irish passports for ourselves and green cards over here. So we don't even have the same citizenship, which is kind of crazy. But as we look at life, the agreement we've come to now is that we'll get citizenship um, in New York in the next few years once our green card allows that, so that if they ever want to live back here in life, we'll be able to just go with them without going through all the visa things. And also, it's such a big part of our lives. I imagine we'll always visit America, so it's good to have.
Mhm.
Whereas in Ireland, we're currently fighting so that they can get Irish passports and be recognized there. And there are ways we could do that, but it's ways that hurt our family. So essentially, we could do a genetic test and find out whose they are genetically, and this could be like they could both be mine, they could both be Owen's, they could be one of each. Because that's how we did the embryos, as in we split it
Mhm.
half down the middle. There was 22 eggs. We fertilized 11 each. Of them, I think there was 9 embryos. Um, and then once they were PGA tested and so on, there was a smaller bunch. But of them, then we were just like put in the two best. And I think actually our first journey we said put in one of mine and one of Bones, and then the second journey we were like, oh, we don't care, just put in the best. So we're very like we just don't know, and it's not that um people always say to us about health issues and so on. Our doctor knows. Like our doctor's not stupid. He has all our blood types. Very
Mhm.
clear, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But would never tell us and would never question us about it or anything. And it's so they know everything they need to know. And if the kids turn around at 16 and say who is genetically my father, then we'll take the test. I don't care. It's more
Right.
about them making them decisions themselves as they come into
Yep.
the world and like grow up. And it's like the egg donor. We very specifically have a relationship with her that we text her all the time. We never say her name on things because of the contract, but we obviously know her
Sure.
name, and we engage with her, and we've met her for dinner, and we have a relationship with her that she's like, if the kids ever want to ask me questions, if they ever want to meet me, I'm very open to that. I'm very happy for that. And she actually, like, one of the things we did was, hey, I know your family are originally from Nigeria. Could you give us more info about like where and some of the things you think they should know as part of that, so that they know that side of their um,
Hmm.
heritage as well. And I think, like, for us, genetics aren't as important, obviously, but it might be for our daughter. But I also just don't think a government needs to know when both of us are genetically Irish.
Hmm.
So, for instance, my brother has five kids, and he is married to an American woman who was actually born in Romania and moved over here years before. And their kids are instantly recognized in Ireland through so they got their passports, no problem, and they should be. Um,
Right.
like, they absolutely should be. But our
So you're not taking away from the rights of
Yeah,
heterosexual people who've had babies. What you're asking for, what it sounds like you're looking for, is rights for yourselves that should be equal to everyone else.
exactly. And I think, well, and this is the thing, this is where it becomes difficult, because then they say, okay, well, we are going to genetically test everyone. And I go, okay, well, that's fine. But you should actually genetically test everyone then. I just want equality across the board. I
Hmm.
like, and I'm sorry if that upsets people, because it makes it like their lives slightly more difficult. But if the government has to have that level of information about my family, they should have it about every family, because they don't know that couples over here aren't using sperm donors and then coming back and saying that the child is genetically Irish, even though they're not, which is apparently what their worry is. And it's this thing of, there's so many old school laws in Ireland as well. Like, even if a woman is married and she has an affair and gets pregnant, the husband is automatically recognized as the father. And there is no way of, like, he has to sign off on that saying that he's not the father, so that the person she had the affair with could be. Um, and this is obviously super problematic um, when they're looking at this genetically Irish, which is the thing the government cares about, which is racist in itself, and I think it's a stupid law. But
Hmm.
that's their prerogative, and I'm like, if that's fine. If that is the law, that is the law, but make it the law for everyone, not just gay couples.
Right.
Yeah, and it's something we've been advocating for, and even they are. So surrogacy isn't even legal in Ireland, but they're putting in the AHR bill, which will bring it into law. But our family still wouldn't be recognised by that, because we weren't resident in Ireland when we did the surrogacy. So it wouldn't cover our family. And it's very much two separate issues. Like, the passport is one thing, and then the recognition is another thing. Because technically, a straight couple who did surrogacy in Ireland could get a passport for their child and just never mention the surrogacy. However, they've lied to the government. I don't think it's legally the best option you should do, but they can
Right.
do it, and it's something we've called out. But on this surrogacy standpoint, even if we are recognized at the moment or go through the law as it is, I was the genetic parent, say, then Owen could only be recognized as a guardian from the ages of 2 to 18. So actually, what's worse about that is, if we lived in Ireland today and I was genetically the parent, and Owen was waiting for the guardianship because neither of our daughters are two yet, and I died, technically, our daughters could be taken by the state.
That's insane.
Um, it's like crazy, and I say this to people, and they're like, "Oh, well, we wouldn't let it happen, and your mom or someone would get them instead." And it's like, it's sorry, it's still not
So,
okay. I wouldn't,
no.
like, it should be my husband, the
Yeah.
father,
Yeah.
like, of the child.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why we're fighting so hard, and it's very complex. I could speak on it for hours. I won't. But it's one of them things that
Yeah.
every time you look at different aspects of the law, you're like, it's discriminatory in so many different ways. And it's just sad. And I hope that in the coming years, our family will know, will be recognized, and they'll know we fought for them, which is the main thing.
Absolutely. So, may I ask another question then pertaining to this? You say that you're
Yes.
staying in the US to
Yeah.
get your citizenship so that when you go back and then if the girls or yourselves decide that they
Yeah.
want to move back to the US, it's easy to do that. Once you get to Ireland with the girls, even if the laws aren't passed, if they're living there with you for any length of time, can you then apply to get passports for them?
So
Or
we
does
can,
that
so
is
we
that
can,
never
so
an
we can get,
option?
no, we can get the passport. We just have to go through this genetic testing and prove
You
that
do have
they
to
are
do it,
genetically
right?
Irish. Yeah. Now it's interesting to me because there are like, if we had adopted the girls as opposed to surrogacy, it would be recognized. Um, so I just don't see how in the long term this law is going to stand up and or this
Mhm.
process is going to stand up. Um, but we'll see. And like, look, it evolves. I
Sure.
also don't think we're going to move back without the passports.
Mhm.
I think there are scenarios. If something happened to one of our parents, we would go back tomorrow,
Right.
obviously. And I would imagine it might be a thing that we would end up staying there for the other parent and supporting them and so on. Even though we both have many other siblings there to do it, but when something like that life changing happens or drastically devastating happens, you would change your plans. And we
Mhm.
would possibly do genetic test then just so that we could. I would hate it. I would hate everything about it, but we would have to. And it's funny. I saw a couple of years ago a newspaper article about them, very similar to us. They had had children abroad through surrogacy and were trying to move home. And they were like, "Oh, we have to do a genetic test," and we're saying the exact same stuff we're saying in the papers. And then a couple of months later, they were living in Ireland and they had taken the genetic test and it was like, well, we have to do it. And I was like, I I don't want to be that couple. I don't
Right.
want to say that we just followed their steps because they existed. It's like I want to challenge them and ask, well, why? Like, why is
Mhm.
that important to you? Why are you testing
Right.
me, but not my friend who has been away for the exact same amount of time as me, is actually married to like someone who's not from Ireland and has two children in the US as well, but you're instantly recognizing them. Whereas, again, they could have done surrogacy, they could have used a sperm donor. You don't know, but
Mhm.
because they're instantly straight, you are assuming that
Yeah.
their family should be recognized.
Yeah. Yeah. So many things, as much as we sometimes feel like the world is taking steps forward, there's so many ways that we are still so far behind.
Oh, I could get into a political thought process on it, but I won't. But I just mean like when we moved to the US, um, and it was scary because of the people who were in power at the time. And
Mhm.
I remember someone saying to me recently, like, how do you feel now um, with the political landscape? And I said, like, look, it's absolutely not perfect. No one is, but it's like I'm not scared for my life. I'm not scared for my children.
Yeah.
Um, and that to me is 100 times better. And I know there's I won't get into every like all this horrible, awful, heinous acts that are happening around the world, and
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
that's obviously not better than where it was when we moved over.
Mhm.
Um, but when I think of our family and the protections we are afforded, we feel safe over here and we feel accepted at the moment, thankfully. Whereas I know like other couples who adopted their own children just because they were afraid if the law changed under the old leadership that their children could be taken away, which is just crazy. And I think actually that happened in Italy, where they
Mhm. Oh,
started. rewriting birth certs. It was
Yep,
outrageous.
yep. The lesbian community, if you are not the person who birthed the child, your name is off the birth certificate in
Yeah.
some parts, not all parts of Italy, but I think sometimes we think in North America that Europe is so forward thinking. And then I hear stories from people about the different ways that maybe, at least in some of these regards, we're a little bit more forward thinking in North America. And it's shocking.
Yeah, it's I almost feel like we're just this swinging like um swinging clock like that goes back and forth, and sometimes we're like super progressive and then others we're absolutely not. And I said it to I have two friends over at the moment from Ireland, and one of the things I said to them last night was uh one of the things I love about here is there's just no casual homophobia in my life. Like I'm not sitting in a pub and someone casually says like, "Oh, that's so gay," or "Don't be such a like." And I used to hear it like daily. I mean,
Hmm.
all the time. And these are people who would love and support you and your family, and they just like
Hmm.
they wouldn't see any problem with using the language or like because it was so commonplace. And
Hmm.
it's I think there's a lot like over here, even for our daughters, because our daughters are mixed race, as I mentioned. One of the things that worried me a lot originally was the racism over here and so on. And actually, that's one of the reasons we actually want to move home is just like their lives are never going to be viewed as equal as like a white woman's.
Hmm.
And then having two gay dads on top of that and everything. And I just would, I've seen so many stories of like how they're treated by police and everything. I just want to move home. However, while they're safe in Ireland, there's very different problems with like
Mm.
the casual racism over there as well, and how they'll be viewed and how that. And I actually think the thing about Ireland is people will love them and accept them, but they'll say comments that are jarring. Like I heard my entire life about being gay, and they're going to have to learn how to handle that,
Hmm.
which isn't the best scenario in any means, ways, or forms, and they shouldn't have to learn how to handle that. And I will continually fight to take people like that out of their lives and so on. But
Hmm. Hmm.
um, the thing is, I would prefer that scenario than coming home one day and finding out that my child something has happened to them
Right.
because of the landscape we're in here and school shootings and everything that goes along with it,
Mm.
which we just don't have in Ireland. It's just because people talk about like, oh, there was a stabbing in Ireland and so on, and I'm like, it's so rare. It is like it's
Right.
whereas I open a newspaper, actually, I turned on the local news the other day, and I was like, I can't watch it. Like it's just so depressing.
Yeah.
There's like heinous acts happening all the time.
Hmm.
And I think that also comes with like Ireland has a very small population, America doesn't.
Right.
So
Sure. No, all of that makes sense. And certainly as, I heard the same kind of comments growing up. And when you point them out to people, because more often than not, we let these microaggressions go. But as an adult, I've looked back and said things to people like my parents and other people who around me have made comments my whole life. You know, these are the comments that you've made that have made me feel uncomfortable to be who I am around you. Well, obviously, I didn't mean you. It was just a joke. Well,
yeah,
it's not so funny. Just so you know, your joke is not so funny.
yeah, I tend to do that. I've actually one of the pieces of feedback I've given friends is like, hey, I can't always be the person to call this out. Sometimes you just need to say it to your friend, and like I need to know that if I'm not in this space, that you would say it, that you would
Yeah,
advocate for me, for my family. Because I
yeah,
said like that's what being an ally is. Being an ally is not coming with me to a gay club and having the time of your life. Uh, being an ally is like putting yourself in them difficult situations.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Walking the walk when I can't do it myself.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. We've gone off on all kinds of tangents.
Sorry, yes.
No, but good. I want to raise awareness because, like I say, we do get comfortable here thinking that Europe is so progressive. And in some respects it is. I don't mean to slight any part of Europe. However, things aren't always equal for everyone, and we need to be conscious of that so that we can do our part to make the world a safe space for ourselves and for our children. That's why we have children, is because we
Yeah.
want to make the world a better place. Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back.
If you're currently pregnant, then you should know that your umbilical cord and placenta are super rich with stem cells. These stem cells have been used to treat type 1 diabetes, different types of cancers, heart disease, multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, and more. With Anja Health, you can actually freeze these stem cells at birth, so your family always has access to that perfect match for your family to use for future disease treatment. To do this, just bring an Anja Health kit with you to birth, tell your provider to place the umbilical cord and placenta in the kit, and then call us for pickup. Get your kit today at anjahealth.com, and don't forget to use the code babyREADY for a surprise discount from babyREADY Live.
You both made some big decisions. You said you used an egg donor from Nigeria. Is it a known donor to you, or is it someone you've become familiar with since?
So it's someone we've become familiar with since. So she her family heritage is Nigeria. She's actually born in New York.
Okay.
Her parents are from Nigeria. So we picked a clinic over here, American Fertility Services, I believe it was called. And because they've actually recently changed their name to like New Way Fertility or something along them lines. But anyway, they had a donor database, and we very quickly like narrowed it down. And my criteria was like, I was originally looking at like education and stuff like that, and health. Health was a big thing. So like Owen's family has migraine, so if anyone even mentioned a headache,
Mhm.
but because it's not something that we wanted passed
Mhm.
on. There's a history of like some heart problems in my family, much like when they're like 70 and so on, but
Mhm.
still don't want to add to that. So obviously you wanted people with good health. So it was funny. The list was quite small, and I think it was like 5 to 6 people. And then I was talking to the doctor, and I said, "How do people usually do this?" And he said, "Well, A, you should relook at your list because education isn't actually as important as you think, because some people come from like lower income families and they just didn't have the
Right.
opportunities." Um, so I kind of went back and we expanded our list again, which wasn't helpful to have
More to choose
10
from.
people instead of 6. But then he said, um, this sounds like an awful comment, but you need to look at luck. You need to see, like, if there's something you don't like about yourself, like if you hate your nose, don't pick someone with a similar
Right.
nose because your child will end up with that nose. Um, and it's funny, um, like there was certain things that like not major things that we dislike about ourselves, but just it was able to be
Sure.
narrowed. So we got it down to 2 people, and the 2 people, one of them was the egg donor we ended up going with, and the other one was this Irish Italian girl who was lesbian, which I loved, and she just seemed super cool and was big into. They were both big into music. That was another criteria that cutting down that list of 10, we were like anyone who mentioned singing or
Mm.
something, we're like top of the list because we're big into that. So we actually picked her, was the Irish Italian woman, and they actually, in hindsight, I'm super glad it didn't work out because she didn't want to be known, and at the time, it was inkling on us, but we also didn't want to be seen as creating what people call designer
Right.
babies by having a mixed race
Right.
child. Um, and obviously everything else that comes with being mixed race that our children would have to go
Sure.
through. So we then had selected this donor and had got her tested. And getting her tested was about $3,000
Oh, okay.
and this is like all the blood tests and everything. Because they do a test when they initially take them on board, but then it's been months, so they need to retest everything. So she had an STI,
Mm.
and it was an STI that affected her fertility. And they were like, "We've taken her off our books. We no longer use her." Because originally I was like, "Can you just give her like a
Hmm.
pill? Like, like what is it?" They were like, "No, we've taken her off the books. It's not something we deal with." I was like, "Okay." And then we were actually going back to scratch and starting again because they were like, "We have some new donors and so on." And about 2 days later, and we hadn't got around to it because I think we were both like grieving almost. You kind of go through these processes of like ups and downs when you go through the process. And she basically, or the our coordinator at the time rang us, and she basically said, I remember meeting with you both. I remember your second choice of egg donor. She has just been tested by a family, and or she was just tested by a family like 2 weeks ago or something, and they found out that they've conceived naturally. Um, if you go with her, we don't have to retest her.
That's a cost savings. I
Um,
mean, it's sad,
and
but
I
it's a
mean, like,
fact.
I know I know it was 3,000 euro or like dollars. I was like, yes. She was definitely top of our list. It felt, do you know what? I said it to Owen at the time. I said, this feels like
Hmm.
fate. And I said, I'm not a very spiritual person at all. But like, what are the odds that we spent months picking? We were struggling with the two of them, and that the person we had chosen, and actually probably chosen for some of the wrong reasons, because like she was white, so our kids might have an easier life as opposed to being
Hmm.
mixed race. Um, and that's not necessarily a reason not to choose. It's just knowing them things and knowing that we have to be more educated in how we raise our
Sure.
children. And I can tell you, we read constantly about like racism and like your unconscious bias and like how to deal with family members and their unconscious bias and how to explain things to the kids and everything like that. And we can only do so much. We're never going to be um, perfect at it, and I know that, and it's why we have like black role models in their lives, who they can ask questions to that we could just never understand. Um, but it felt like fate, and we decided to go with her, and she was the loveliest person, and we've met her, and she actually released a song a while ago as well. And I came across it because I obviously know
Hmm.
her, and she sent it on, and I was like, oh wow, she like, because she had said she sang, but she didn't audition or whatever, but she was
Oh,
amazing.
good.
And it's so funny because Aria now, because we both sing all the time, sings constantly. Like she wakes up and she'll like be singing in her bed. And it's just so lovely to see that passed on. I'm very hopeful Nala has the same traits, because even if it's not a career for them or anything, because that's not exactly what we wanted it for. It's more like in Ireland, it's big at the end of the night to like sing a song, or just like it's music is such
Sure.
a big part of Irish
Sure.
culture. And actually, our egg donor was telling us it's a part of Nigerian culture as
Okay.
well, which is nice. As she said, especially like her family and everything, she said they all sing, like it's a big part, and I was like, that's lovely to hear. So it's nice. It's all we can do to create our family was make informed decisions. That was one of the many ones we had to
Sure.
make.
It's not an inexpensive journey. We've talked about this before we started recording. Do you have an idea about how much money you've had to invest in the creation of your family?
Yeah, it's at least 200,000 between the two journeys. Now, I will say that I am very lucky that I am a project manager and I was able to do things without an agency.
Hmm.
Um, so for us, like the first journey, we found our surrogate on Facebook, and she was from Texas. And I didn't even know what the costs were for her and so on, but she basically, we had met, and actually, I'll tell you, I had met a lot of surrogates, and I think we really advocate for like ethical surrogacy as we move forward. And I just think like, unfortunately, there's some people on all sides who are not in it for the right
Right.
reasons. And I just think you trust
Yeah.
your heart, you go instantly. Like from Haley talking to her for 2 minutes, I was like, this is this is the
Mm-hmm,
person.
mm-hmm.
God, I hope she likes us. And she gave us a price based on previous surrogacy she had done, which was very reasonable compared to what we know other people have paid and so on. Um, and then on our second journey with her, we went through the contract line. She was like, I'm not going to put more money on your plate because I know you struggled as it was. And we kind of talked through like, well, do you need maternity clothes again? No. But like, I know you needed like massages at the end of your pregnancy to help with like back pain and stuff. I think it was sciatica or something along them lines. And we were like, yeah, let's just put
Right,
that in. So it wasn't about like saving money. It was just making sure that the money went to the right
right.
places for her, because it is this thing that when there's a contract in place, and we were all very clear on this, like what the contract says
Mm-hmm.
goes. And there were situations in the first journey that things weren't in the contract, and Haley would ask for them. And there were times we said, yes, absolutely, that makes sense. And then there were other times when we said, well, it doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
right here. And obviously, because we're still friends and we did a second journey, they were the right decisions at the time. And we just made sure to put that all in the contract because it makes the conversations
Sure.
easier and less about money. So we actually rarely talk to Haley about money, other than like, I think when she was coming to New York, she brought for the second journey, she brought her whole family and she brought her kids and everything because we knew them all and we had a great time. And we generally would like pay for one person to come with her. Um, we obviously couldn't afford to bring all her family as
Mm-hmm.
well. So like the conversation was around, well, look, if we'll pay for them all, and then just so that you're on the same flight, and then you just transfer us the money for that and stuff like it's like
Right.
things like that, but nothing ever like, oh, you should have paid me this or this should be the. It was all so smooth and seamless. So there was that portion of it, which I would say accounted for half of everything we've paid over the two journeys. And then there was the clinic, which had fees as well. The clinic actually overcharged us because so the health insurance, which is another
Mm-hmm.
big portion of it, I called them and I said, do you have fertility benefits? And this was before we ever started our first. And they said, yes, I do. And your company MasterCard covers that. And I was like, amazing, great. And they said, okay, so you meet all the criteria from what we've been talking about, so on. What is your wife's name? And I said, oh, my husband's name is Owen. And they said, oh, I'm sorry, sir, you're not covered under the benefits. And I said, can you repeat the line you just told me a minute ago in the policy? Because that's the only line around the criteria. And they said, yes, it's a couple who have had sex without a condom for a year without getting pregnant. And I said, well, that's fine because I meet that criteria. And they said, well, no, sir, because neither of you can get pregnant. And I said, there are women who can't get pregnant. Um, and they said, well, no, it's gender. And I said, there's no gender markers in this policy. I said, you don't have any other like wording around it. So it's discriminatory. You're clearly discriminating against us because we're
Mm-hmm.
gay. And they said that, look, we're not going to change this, but there's something your company can do, which is pay for it for you. And so it's like they basically pay this surplus fee for their queer employees who want to go through fertility treatment. And I brought it up with MasterCard, not for me, actually. I just didn't want anyone to have to go through that call
Right.
again. Um, and they implemented it. So
Wow.
now all families are covered under it. It's why I've been with them like 10 years almost, is like if they're missing something, they'll fix it.
Right.
It's not about not wanting to do the right thing. It's just sometimes like you're a 10,000 people company, not everything has come up yet. And once it came up, they fixed it and they actually backdated it for us.
Wow.
So we had already paid the clinic because we just didn't think it was going to come through. But the clinic then got covered, and now not everything was covered. Like Haley's transfer wasn't covered and so on because she is not one of the members of the health insurance.
Right.
That is me, myself, and Owen. But like our sperm being tested was covered, our blood tests were
Oh,
covered, all of that was covered. I think actually some of the egg retrieval was covered as well because it's like we're counted as infertile, so we would need the eggs.
mhm.
So the second journey, we went back and forth with this clinic for months over it. It was like crazy. But the second journey was pretty much covered from a clinic perspective because of
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
thankfully. But then there's huge legal fees that come with everything, which were
Mhm.
like I think about 15 to 20,000 as well. Um, and again, thankfully, I was able to get like a little bit of legal insurance and through work, and I was able to get discounts on it. The other thing I did was we went through Men Having Babies, which is an organization that supplies discounts to clinics and so on. There are so many things that I just, because I am a project manager and know to look places
Right.
and know to look for discounts, I went and sought them out. Whereas I actually know a couple. He like he must be a multimillionaire. He's like working for a conglomerate. Like I know him through a conference. Like I met him once there, and they basically were saying they wanted to start having kids, and I contacted him, or sorry, he contacted me, and he asked me, and I kind of walked him through the process, and he said, like, I just don't have the capacity to do all of that
Right.
work.
Because it's a lot.
Um, it's a lot. It was a second full-time
Hmm.
job. So he went with an agency, and I think for his journey alone, he told me he paid 350,000 for his one child, and it's it's just like baffling
Hmm.
to me. And the biggest thing I struggle with is people say to me like, "Oh, with 2 men in a surrogacy, like, are you trying to create a brand and so on?" And I'm like, "Yes, I would love a brand to do things like maybe create a children's book for the kids to explain surrogacy, or like provide
Hmm.
education around surrogacy, and it's more and like advocate for law changes." But one thing I would never do, and I'm huge on this, is like creating an agency that basically charges people to create a family. And now I understand
Hmm.
like there are I actually think there are ways of doing it like that you charge the clinics as opposed to the
Hmm.
families, and so on, like many other business models in the world. But we're just taking advantage of people at the hardest points of their lives, like people who are just desperate for a
Hmm.
child and will do anything and pay anything to make that a reality. And this is why I'm a huge advocate for like ethical surrogacy as well, because my struggle with it is by them putting these limitations in place and these crazy fees, they are making people search non-ethical
Hmm.
avenues
And
and
grossly unsafe in some cases.
and grossly unsafe. And I've had this conversation with people before where they're like, "Oh, I'm looking at this," and I said, "No, like,
Hmm.
don't. Like, it's not the place you should look. It's like it's not safe." And the thing is, you're not only putting that poor woman at risk, you're putting your
Sure.
family at risk. Like it's not a good scenario for anyone involved. And like I know you like might have to wait another couple of years to save the money and so on, but just it's worth it in the end, or like trying to pursue as many avenues as you can to create your family, because as I said, like just 350,000 or like is outrageous. And hearing some of the people from Ireland, because I'm in a advocacy group, Irish Gay Dads, who advocate for rights in Ireland, um, hearing some of the fees they have to pay over here is
Hmm.
crazy. It's just, and it's deeply upsetting. But um, I like every cent we spent, I'd spend it twice, three times over to have our wonderful family. And I think people see it as like buying a child sometimes or whatever, and it's like absolutely not. That's not what it
Hmm.
is. It's like we paid the clinics for their services, so on, just like anyone would in
Hmm.
IVF. And Haley, who is our surrogate, was compensated for her
Hmm.
time. And I know people do like unpaid surrogacy journeys as well. Like fair play to them people. They're incredible. Um, I don't think that is a sustainable model in the world for people to do. And I think like Haley still had a full-time job and everything. It wasn't as if she like surrogacy was her job. It was that she just got compensated for her time not being able to drink, not being able to, I don't think she smokes anyway, but not being able to do any of the
Right,
things
right,
that she might want to
sure.
do, go on a go-kart, whatever it is.
Right. Bungee jump.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, yeah, of course you deserve like some type of payment for
Mhm.
that. And that incredible, incredible gift she gave us, she's just so incredible and we are blessed. So while money is an important aspect of it, and I think people should be aware of what they're spending and aware of the alternate methods of like going. So mine was called an independent journey. If you are looking it up, you can do an independent journey. And I'm very happy to talk to people through that because someone actually spoke to me
Mhm.
about it and walked me through it. And if they hadn't, I wouldn't have had a clue. And honestly, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford surrogacy. Or if we had, it would have been maybe one child, one
Right.
surrogacy.
Yeah. If you could have spoken to, you said you spoke with someone about what you needed to think about. If you could have spoken to a professional about any parts of the whole thing, is there anyone else that you wish that you had had a chance to talk to or learn from before you got started so that you had some awareness about any of it?
Um, Yeah, I would talk to other parents about their journeys and find out. There's groups like there's so many parent groups for like IVF, for surrogacy, for all these different methods of having a child. There are like Men Having Babies was great. I was super glad we worked with them just because of the research they had already
Hmm.
done. For me, I think I you're told statistics a lot. So you're told like, okay, your child, you've like a 9% chance for this to work, or you've this percent chance and so on. And we got to 16 weeks with twins. Actually, Aria was a twin, and we were pretty much told it was like 90% safe or something like a very high statistic, like that nothing's gonna go wrong. And then a week later, we lost our son. Um, and I mean, it was the hardest thing I think I've ever gone through. And we like we were actually in my mother's house when it happened, and they had never like none of my siblings had lost a child or anything like that. And my mother was like trying to support us, and Owen was there as well, so like trying to comfort us and support us. And I just needed her not to be there and not in my space, and I like took it out on her again, and I like was deeply apologetic after, and I was like, I just need to be alone, I just need to have these emotions. But I there was so many parts of that, like when the child was born, like our son Shane, we had to cremate him and stuff, but we were told he wasn't going to be born and that he was going to disappear and so on.
Okay.
And I think the biggest learning I've taken out of all of this, because it was
Hmm.
horrific by every standards of the word, was medical professionals don't always get it right.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's worth asking second opinions, and it is worth looking online. And I hate that people say, like, I know what they say about like looking online can stress you out and so on. But I knew, so we had done a private scan with, it was actually my birthday.
Oh.
And I said, I want to do a private scan. And I instantly knew by the person's face, because we were FaceTiming, that something was wrong. And she said, I'm going to refund you your money for this scan, which instantly
Oh.
like sent it through. And she couldn't tell me anything because she wasn't a
Hmm.
medical, like it was like meant to be a fun
Right.
scan. So I went back and I said, hey, I have some questions for you. Can I call you afterwards? Because she couldn't. And she said, yeah. And this was about after an hour of me researching. And I said, you said that Twin B was smaller. Like, how much smaller? Like, what was the measurement? And I could tell that like hadn't grown in a week. And what was the position? And was there water around them? Or like what could you see? And could tell me these specific things, but couldn't say your child has died.
Right.
Um, and I really appreciated that woman because she knew I knew what I was asking. She was very thoughtful in her responses, and she just ended with the call with, "I'm so sorry for your loss." And she legally couldn't say that,
Right.
like, but she
Yeah.
knew, and I knew, and there was no, like, she was, as she said, she was like a nurse in a hospital for years,
Right.
and it was because people kept saying, like everyone around us kept saying, because I told my mother because I broke down crying, and then my mother told everyone else, just to be like, don't be texting Mark and Owen about the babies, obviously, until they figure this out. But what they had said was, you'll do a scan tomorrow and you'll confirm everything. So I think everyone else was living out for hope. But once I had that call, I didn't. And I think if I had had a day of hope, it would have wrecked me, like more
Right.
so than what it did. So we talk about this a lot, is like, even now, when I talk to my sister and my sister-in-laws and my brothers and everything about like their children and how they're told um certain things to do by the Irish nurses, it's completely different of what we're told to do in America. But neither is wrong. It's just a different way of
Right.
dealing with things based on standards. So like there's some things I've taken from them, and I'm sure some things they took from us, as in like that this works for the child. And that's what it's about, what works for the child. And I just think like when you're going through this, you put so much trust in everyone, is that like not everyone knows all the answers, and it's worth getting a second opinion, and it's worth trusting your gut. And actually the biggest thing for me is that like if you are working with an agency or someone you are paying to organize all of this, you are not their primary focus. Like the child is not their
Right.
primary focus. Getting paid is their primary focus. And as soon as you have that child, if you're left in Mexico without a passport home with your child, they will leave you there. And I've seen it happen
Oh,
time and time
yeah.
again. It's like the only way you can protect yourself and your family is being educated and doing the research, because the more trust you put in someone, the more you leave your family at risk for problems that happen in the journey.
That makes absolute sense. It's sad, but it makes absolute sense.
It's very sad. It's not everyone has the right intentions going into these
Right.
things, unfortunately. And it's funny, like I obviously run our Instagram, and when we picked the name, it was like so it's 2 Men and a Surrogacy, and it was like based on I don't know if you know like Three
Right,
Men
right,
and a
right.
Baby
Yes.
was what I was
Yeah,
thinking when I
yeah.
did it. And when we thought about, we actually were going to say, I think 2 Men and a Baby, and then it wasn't available or something, so we did surrogacy. And actually, I'm glad we did, because now we advocate for surrogacy a lot more than I think. But a lot of surrogacy agencies reach out to us, finding us through the name, and they're like, "I will pay you to like get online and say that you should use this agency for surrogacy," which I would like. Ethics is huge for me. I just would
Right.
never do it. It's just not like ethically sound. But there are couples that do it. And even like when you're following someone on Instagram, like if they like put an agency out there and say you should use this, did they use it? Are they getting paid for this? And ask them questions, because they should tell you. Like, do they know of any problems the agency's had? Like, ask the questions, and always, always, always speak to a lawyer, because lawyers, while sorry, a lawyer that's not affiliated with the
Right,
agency,
right. Yeah.
yeah, because they will know the truth and what to do and say.
That's you've given me so much information to mull and process and think about. I sincerely appreciate it. I've also taken up a significant amount of your time, and I will let you get back to work. But I have one last question that I would love to ask you, if I may.
Yeah.
And that is to ask you, what is your absolute favorite part of parenting your girls?
So I haven't got there with Nala yet, but Arya going to bed and like tucking her in, and when I say love you, and then she says love you back. Um, and I'm like turning off the light and you just hear it, and it's it it's just so wonderful. Like knowing the love she has for us, and like her coming down and cuddling us and so on. Because Nala is so different because we have this like love for her, and I'm sure she also has a love for us, but there's no way of
Mm-hmm.
expressing it because she's 2 months
Mm-hmm.
old. So we're just like obsessed with every little thing she does. We're like, oh, she smiled or she gurgled or she did this, and it's amazing. But it's not the same as when a child can express their emotions to
Right.
you, and when they just want to like, because even now sometimes like Arya will run up and be like cuddle daddy and like give you a little hug or whatever, and then there's other times we start seeing like ourselves in her as well, where um now I've created a nightmare. It's my own fault. I used to be like cheese all the time with photos because like we all need to learn how to smile and take a photo, and I just think it's a good
Yeah.
trait to be able to take a good photo. She now stops me in the middle of my day and it's like, Daddy cheese, and like poses um for a photo. So just seeing the personality
Right.
come through, knowing the love they have for us, just uh, being a family, and just everyday life, honestly, I think is the best. The little
Yeah.
moments.
That that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me today and to share all of your wisdom with the listeners. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me. I had such a great time.
Me too. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.